develop these skills themselves. They can pre-think through, if they take one action and it's followed by one outcome, and they take another action followed by another outcome, that eventually they will get themselves into a situation that they don't like. In this case, it was driving without a driver's license and being stopped by the police. And you can think through how you would get into trouble and therefore avoid the action in the future. Or a second tool is maneuvering around conflicts. There are different conflicting situations that we get into as children. This tool will allow you to be able to help other children avoid conflicts, or avoid conflict yourself with adults in your life. For example, enabling students to follow school rules on their own initiative, as opposed to having to be told all the time to, why do you follow the rule? You're a bad child, for example. No one likes to be told that they're a bad person, but we find ourselves in internal conflicts. One shoulder we have the devil telling us to do one thing, and the other shoulder we have an angel telling us to do something else. So this second tool, called a conflict solution diagram, teaches you how to self-monitor and avoid maneuver conflicts. Third tool is about goal setting, and here I extracted an example from a child who said they wanted to grow up to be a good father based on the example in their own lives, where they were missing that father figure. Again, it's another diagram. You set yourself an ambitious goal, and then you identify the obstacles to that goal and systematically identify countermeasures or intermediate objectives and work towards achieving each of those intermediate objectives. If you're able to systematically achieve intermediate objectives, then before you know it, you've achieved your big goal. Ladies and gentlemen, just wanted to give you a brief introduction to 3 logic diagrams that give you practical skills, give children practical skills to expand their mind and develop the wisdom we need to allow us to live up to the promise of our pledge. Thank you very much. Back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. All right, so I see some hands raised. I want you to know that feel free to raise your hands and we can accept some conversation regarding our presentations that have happened so far. I want you all to kind of note as well that in the last hour of our session, this is a 2-hour session. In the last hour of our session, we'll be focusing on having some conversation, some discussion about different topics, and we anticipate you turning on your mics, of course, and asking your questions or contributing to those discussions as favorably as possible. So I saw some hands being raised earlier on, but before we take any form of feedback regarding these presentations that have just went, I just want to thank all of our presenters who presented so far. Mr. Gordon, thank you so much for talking to us about being a boy in the 21st century and in Jamaica. Thank you, Mr. Bonnie Rose, for speaking to us about choices, and Mr. Robinson, again, for giving us the tools that we need to make decisions. So gentlemen are part of the chat, and ladies who are here with us this afternoon, what do we think about the media grooming our children? We heard that in Mr. Gordon's presentation. Yes, I see Mr. Dave Collington Davis.
Hi, good evening. Well, my name is Nicholas. I generally noticed that I came in a bit when the guy was presenting on how boys generally act in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I was never one of those boys, but I was the boy who was teased by those boys, considering that I was the one who was always considered to be gay or just weird or anything like that. See, I think generally, for me personally, because I was treated as such, when I do teach my students, no, I try to keep an exactly as open mind as possible, because I realize that not every person might react to a certain stereotype, even though they are of that gender, but the majority is true. I do have a group of boys every now and then in a classroom where they're always in a clique or they come from a particular community, so they always operate as such. So what I've done as a teacher is that I have always tried to find one of the upper schoolers from that community, reach with them, link with them, get them to understand that, hey, I'm really trying to help you and the rest of the persons from your community. And then from there, their respect that they have for that upper schooler trickles down to me. And that's how I've always had a balance of it. I don't think, and for everybody else who's here, I think the best thing to do is for each student, let them try to gain or give them respect on an individual basis. And from that individual basis, you will get a lot more in return. Don't treat them like a pack. Uh, we all know saying that every card pack, when I get the same card all the time. Trust me. And if it was so, then every card game would be boring.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have to say. Y'all take care.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Now, Mr. Mohammed Marine.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, we're hearing you.
Yes. Let me first say I appreciate this forum and for this venture in highlighting how we men or the male in society is being developed. Let me say this first and foremost. I think we must bear in mind that male and female socialize differently. When I was growing up, and I use this example, there was a time when I was in church and they had this same discussion talking about male and female. And I came up with this analogy, and it has to do with construction using wood, different form of wood, different type of wood, different size. You have 2x4, 1x3, and the finisher that use are strip that is used at the door to stop the door. You know, those very flimsy wood. For each board or for each wood require a different size that we for the work to be completed. You don't expect a 2-inch nail to be used in the 2x4 for it to adequately fulfill the work that is needed to be done. And I don't think you need a 6 inches for the stripper that will need for the finisher at the doorstop, if you understand what I'm saying. So I'm saying that we must understand, first depict and highlight the different measures in which we deal with men or deal with male on a whole. So we must also look at the social background as how, because that's one of the key era in which males are developed, because a male that comes from a home that only has one parent versus one that comes from a home that has two will automatically be socialized differently, but not necessarily become the same person. So what I'm getting at is that there must be some measure, some I'm trying to find words to actually bring on my presentation here. But there must be something that is needed to fulfill the desired need to bring men into being men. Because what I'm seeing happening here is that we are, should I say, we are seeing where homes are having homes without men, are having men but not men at all, fulfilling the role of a man. So we must know what is the cause of this by looking back in terms of what we have done that was right, and we have seen the fruit, and go back to that and also see how best we can bring in other things into being that will cause a greater result for the future. Because if we continue in this, then we're going to reap the same thing here and after. So this is just my input on this on a whole. I hope it has made a lot of sense here.
Thanks so much for that contribution. And our next hand, Anthony Morrison. So Morrison, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Just like to make a few comments here. We are seeing where men tend not to speak up. We see a lot more sorority groups than fraternity groups, right? So I must say I applaud you for this initiative where our boys and our men can, share their views, their insights, and so on. I give just an example just now. We see in our community, we give scholarships to students on an annual basis. Last year, we saw 20 females applying for the scholarship and only 2 males, right? So these are the kind of disparities that we are talking about, and this is for tertiary institutions, right? This year, we have not yet tallied the applications, but I'm seeing a lot more females applying than males. So our males need to seek out for these opportunities a bit more. They need to speak up a bit more. The other thing I want to point out is that society tends to be more sympathetic towards females. So we have to be mindful of that, right? There are cases where men are not so verbally inclined, right? So there might be things that are affecting them and they don't speak about it, they internalize everything. The other point is that if you speak down to our men, for example, every day, you're no good, you're not worth it, you are, after a while, they begin to they believe it, right? So we have to compliment each other, even as men. Yeah, man, that shoes the bad, that shirt they look nice for you today. We have to begin complimenting our men, just like we would have complimented the ladies, right? So these are just a few of my comments as we progress.
All right, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Anthony. I just want to let you gentlemen know that this is an open space. It's a safe space for all of us to participate. So younger people, gentlemen in school, feel free to chime in. It's not just about an adult conversation. It's a general conversation. It's a safe space for boys, men, and the like. Let us all feel free to express ourselves and what we've received from our presentations going forward. We have time to accept these 3 more hands that are raised, and then we will move to viewing a video and have another presentation after that. And from that presentation, we can have some more thorough discussions on a more general sense. So Dennis McCog, feel free to go ahead and speak to us.
Yes, sir.
Your microphone isn't working well, Dennis. I'm not hearing you. All right, in the interim, we'll accept Mr. Tyrone Mason. You can go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening. All right, from what I understand, most of the young people that are behind bars are mostly young men because they tend to follow the wrong company. They end up participating in drugs, theft, or some of those activities in which they led to them behind bars because of wrong company.
Definitely. So we see how influence takes a part in how we are able to help ourselves and how we interact in society as well. So definitely good for that point. We'll have all right, we'll have ladies. We have ladies whose hands are raised. We'll hear from the ladies now. So I am unmuting Candice Allen.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for unmuting me. Finally, a voice from the females. Well, I don't know if he was the first presenter, but I entered at about 4:15, and he had the background, and it was, almost like a lecture. It was pretty organized. I don't remember who that person was, but he was talking about the boys in our classrooms. And while he was speaking out, the thought came to mind that historically, may not necessarily be the case in Jamaica, but especially in other westernized developed countries like the United States and England, men were the ones being educated first. women were excluded. So I'm wondering at what point did the education system drop the ball and started just focusing on the females or feminizing our education, that it is an issue now. So to the point where we are not able to effectively reach our boys. Another thing is that I've taught at two all-boys schools before, two prominent all-boys schools. And I remember the first time I was teaching at the first all-boys school, the HOD just said, listen, don't bother with the fluff that you learned at Teachers College, just get to the point. And that has been one of my main focal points in teaching over the years. Just get to the point, just get to the point. Boys are pretty straightforward. Don't get them lost in the fluff where education is concerned. And I've seen boys excel in my subject area, which is foreign languages. That is, you know, the bane of frustration for a lot of students, whether females or males. Another point I'd like to make is I'm aware that in Jamaica, our males, especially our young men, they're like the most at-risk groups. I live in a community and I see it for myself. It is so difficult for them. And I'm not sure how we're going to really save them effectively and consistently, you know, because the Jamaican culture or the parts of the Jamaican culture that attract them, you know, it's so hard to fight against it because it's the fast money, quick money, the, you know, go hard or what's the saying? Get rich or die, get rich quick or die trying or something like that. It's a lot. And the ones who choose the path of education, you know, they have really had the support over the years, but the others who get lost by the wayside, they're dealing with a lot of stresses, a lot of strains. And I believe that it's not just classroom, and what we do in the subject area, but there needs to be something else to help them out, some other course, some other subjects, something. Some of the role models who have made it the legal way need to come in and help out our boys. Some of the ones who learned from their illegal ways need to also come in and speak to them. I had a child who told me he was just learning Spanish so that he could make a successful shipment of drugs from Colombia. So, you know, it's a lot that we have to do. So I know my participation probably raises more questions than provide answers, but I too am very concerned about our males. And yeah, so more questions than answers, really. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so definitely we see that this is a multifactorial issue that has to be addressed all across the nation. I do agree that, you know, it's not necessarily just the time, just for sure, and that education should cater to all stakeholders and all different genders throughout the classroom. And definitely you made some solid points there. So something has to be done, and that's why this conversation is being facilitated this evening. Time for only 2 more questions, ladies and gentlemen. Let's try to keep our questions, let's try to keep our comments a little more succinct, so we can have some more persons being able to participate. So I'm going to be unmuting Dwayne Davis. You can go ahead, Dwayne.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're hearing me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, great. So from listening to the discussion, it's definitely going to be a culture change. As you've heard the comments before, it says has to be teacher as well by profession. So you know it is in the classroom. I had once in my class, a grade 6 class, where it was only one girl. It's not a co-ed school, so just the one girl, and I had to deal with them differently, you know? So it's reaching out to them, sometimes talk like them, don't be disrespectful. Like you go down to their level and reason with them, as the young lady said earlier, get to the point with the boys. Because if you're going around the corner and everything, they won't get bored. So I said definitely overall, I think we just have to start here and move it outside of just this platform and to the different schools, have a program, have persons really have government entities, NGOs, you name it, getting involved in all of that. And I think we'll have it can change, and it will. Once that is done, then we're on our way to success. Even with the fallout of this online, a lot of the boys are missing. So we have to find a way to bridge the gap and all of that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I hope our stakeholders on this call this afternoon are listening so we can know how to move forward as a nation and how to develop programs that will assist in the rehabilitation of our culture as it pertains to how we grow gentlemen. Now we'll accept Mr. Bennett.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. So this is just in response to Mr. Knight's question about how media influences our children. It does definitely influence them. As you can see with social media challenges, the crate challenge, ice bucket challenge, Charlie, are you there? Many more. All these things created and broadcasted online. Children tend to emulate to them. They usually gravitate to the wrong things or what we who see the dangers of whatever challenge is wrong. They may also see it as trendy and want to take part because quote unquote everyone else is. Also with social media, we as influencers or parents of our boys, we have to safeguard them from the negative impacts or unnecessary things. You control what you allow in your personal space, guys. We as men, we tend to focus on the ill or the hype, the latest clothes, gadgets, which in particular isn't a bad thing if you're techie because you know some persons of those types of things. Some irrelevant things. It sometimes even causes emotional stresses because we tend to make comparisons between ourselves and the things that we are seeing on social media over the materialistic things in life. We don't usually focus on the beneficial things of society that will contribute to our overall development, like scholarship applications, as someone mentioned earlier about only two boys applying. And it is imperative as men that we don't get lost to the online system and we stay focused on our personal development. We also have to realize that the materialistic things can wait and will eventually be achieved. We just have to stay humble in the game, isn't it? And just stay focused on, our future plans.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bennett. Lovely contribution. Thanks for answering the question as posed earlier on. Given time, we will be looking at a video, gentlemen on the call and ladies who are visiting. And after that video, we'll put a pause for some discussion of the video after our presentation that we will have immediately after. So let's pay attention to our screen.
Normal boy is a serious liability in today's classroom. Boys tend to be disorganized and restless. Some have even been known to be noisy and hard to manage. Sound like any boy you know? But increasingly, our schools have little patience for what only a couple of decades ago would have been described as boyishness. As psychologist Michael Thompson has aptly observed, girls' behavior is the gold standard in schools. Boys are treated like defective girls. Now, as a result, these defective girls are not faring well academically. Compared with girls, boys earn lower grades, they win fewer honors, they're far less likely to go to college. Boys are languishing academically while girls are prospering. In an ever more knowledge-based economy, this is not a recipe for a successful society. We need to start thinking about how we can make our grade school classrooms more boy-friendly. Well, here are 4 reforms that would make a very good start. 1, turn boys into readers. In all age groups, across all ethnic lines, boys score lower than girls on national reading tests. Good reading skills, need I say, are critical to academic and workplace success. A major study in the UK discovered, not surprisingly, that girls prefer fiction, magazines, and poetry, while boys prefer comics and nonfiction. Boys whose eyes glaze over if forced to read Little House on the Prairie may be riveted by the Guinness Book of Records.
Cool.
Boys will read if given materials that interest them. If you're looking for suggestions for books that have proved irresistible to boys, go to guysread.com. 2, inspire the male imagination. Celebrated writing instructor Ralph Fletcher contends that too many teachers take what is called the confessional poet as the classroom ideal. Personal narratives full of emotions and self-disclosure. These are stories girls commonly write, and these are prized, whereas action stories describing, say, a skateboard competition or a monster devouring a city, these are not. I recently read about a third grader in Southern California named Justin who loved science fiction, pirates, and battles. Well, an alarmed teacher summoned his parents to school to discuss the picture the 8-year-old had drawn of a sword fight, which included several decapitated heads. The teacher expressed grave concern about Justin's values. The boy's father was astonished, not by his son's drawing, which to him was typical boy stuff, but by the teacher's overwrought and female-centered reaction. If boys are constantly subject to disapproval for their interests and enthusiasms, they're likely to become disengaged and lag further behind. Our schools need to work with, not against, the kinetic imaginations of boys. 3, zero out, zero tolerance. Boys are nearly 5 times as likely to be expelled from preschool as girls. And in grades K through 12, boys account for nearly 70% of suspensions. Now, this is often for minor acts of insubordination and sometimes for entirely innocent behavior. Hardly a week goes by without a news story about a young boy running afoul of the school's zero tolerance policy. Josh Welsh, age 7, was recently sent home from his Maryland school for nibbling off the corners of a strawberry Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun. Josh, like many other boys punished for violating zero tolerance policies, was guilty of nothing more than being a typical 7-year-old boy. 4, bring back recess. Believe it or not, recess may soon be a thing of the past. According to research summarized by the Science Daily, since the 1970s, school children have lost close to 50% of their unstructured outdoor playtime. And much-loved games have vanished from schoolyards. In schools throughout the country, games like dodgeball, Red Rover, even tag have all but disappeared. Too damaging to self-esteem or too violent being the usual excuse. One popular classroom guide suggests tug of war be replaced with tug of peace. Boys need to work off their energy. They need to be free to play games they enjoy, and keeping them cooped up and inside all day will not help them learn. As our schools become more feeling-centered, more competition-free, more sedentary, they move further away from the needs of boys. We need to reverse the boy-averse trends. Male underachievement is everyone's concern. These are our sons. These are the young men with whom our daughters will build a future. If boys are in trouble, so are we all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen who are here in our chat. Stop sharing my screen. All right, so we need to encourage our men to read. We need to ensure that we inspire the male imagination, and we need to put our men on a pedestal for success, right? That said, I want to hear about our next speaker, who is Mr. Leon Pennycook, who will be talking to us this afternoon about his journey within the Jamaican classroom. A little bit about Mr. Cook. He is a past Clarendonian from humble beginnings. He majored in computer studies and science at Church Teachers College, Mandeville, before teaching 3 years in Jamaica. He taught at the Frankfield Primary School, Spanish Town YMCA, and Greater Portmore High School from 2005 to 2008. He migrated to England in 2008, where he worked full-time as a mathematics and computing teacher while studying at the University of Derby, and graduated in 2010 with a Bachelor in Combined Studies. He is currently living in England, a teacher of computer science, and is the head of the business and computing department. Mr. Pennycook is a self-taught computer programmer and has turned his passions into a business. He loves teaching and coding. He has created software that will help students, teachers, schools, or the whole country to monitor their progress and adapt to improve in real time. That said, ladies and gentlemen, kindly help me welcome Mr. Pennycook.
Hello, everyone. I would like to share my screen just to sort of like give a pictorial overview of my quick journey.
Mr. Cook, if your PowerPoint has audio, we can't hear. Could you share your audio?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm assuming that you did not hear me from the start. So I was saying that I grew up in Clarendon. My parents were really poor. I did not start school until I was 7 years old. That was just at the end of year one, going into year two. Reason being is because we were really poor. My parents could not afford school uniform. And when I started to go to basic school, they sent me back home saying that I wasn't ready to learn. So I didn't start school until quite late. I went to the Frankfield Primary School and I was very excited to go, but I quickly started to dislike school because school for me was all about beating. I was so scared to go to school because every day I knew that something was going to happen and I was going to get beaten. Partly because I didn't understand how to read or know anything about the letters of the alphabet or couldn't follow the instructions that the teachers were giving. And I was sort of like a little beating stick. I have some really terrible memories about my time. And even now, sometimes I think about those times and I want to cry. I feel really hurt by how I was beaten and treated. And this was partly because I went to school late and I didn't understand the whole procedure. Reading, writing, numbers and everything. Nobody taught me any of those. And the teacher started to teach me from the top, which made it really difficult for me to progress or understand what was going on. In grade 4, again, pretty much beating continued for not being able to do well on spelling tests or pass simple class tests as they were given out weekly. My life was a living hell, pretty much. I used to see the world as just a horrible place because everybody was horrible to me, even other students. Like, this is the dunce one. I was in the dunce class, sitting on the dunce side in the dunce class. So at one point I was just sitting in school watching what was going on because teachers didn't really pay much attention to me or pretty much support me based on my needs or anything. I was just a dunce kid sitting there and didn't do much work. I failed common entrance, I failed the special entrance, and those are sort of like exams that were designed for kids who could read or kids who could do well in particular skills like maths and recalling information. I was not one of those students. I was just not able to read and interpret or understand what was being taught to me. I went to Edwin Allen High School and there was 7-1 to 7-13, I think, in that year. But for some reason, they took me and put me in 7-3 because of my last name. I think the vice principal knew my dad and said she was doing some experiment about putting remedial students with high ability students to see how they would turn out after a few years. So pretty much I was in a bright class and was one of the only students in there who did not pass the common entrance. I was there pretty much not understanding what was going on, but sort of like writing from other kids' books and so on. And in every test, every day, I failed. But I was out of there silently listening and trying to learn and trying to figure out for myself why I wasn't able to learn and how things was so difficult for me. At the end of year 11, I pretty much passed 3 subjects, which was really low grades. So so after leaving school, I went and did all of these little jobs. I ran taxi with my dad, did some backup work, did welding, reared chickens, and some wood cutting. I went to evening class. I studied IT, or information technology, English and maths at Frankfield Primary School with some teachers. So I used to go to the classes and pay for my lessons. And pretty much most of it was self-taught. So reading the textbooks and trying to understand it from the basics and so on. After a few years, I went to Teachers College, really got in with some really low grades. And it's because of persistence. I went there and I really begged and tried so hard 2 years in a row until they just sort of like said, okay, let's give you a chance. And they sort of like made a comment that I would drop out in probably a few months after our first test and so on. So these are some pictures of my graduation ceremony. I was really proud of myself, and I then became a proper teacher. A few years later, I went back to the same Frankfield Primary School to teach. I ended up teaching some of the same teachers who taught me computing or IT. I then moved to Spanish Town and I taught at YMCA. This was mostly boys, pretty much bad boys, who weren't going to regular schools, and I learned a lot from them. And they did really well that year. I then moved to Greater Portmore High School, and I taught for a year as well. And then I migrated to England to teach maths and IT. I've taught in several schools in England, and while I was teaching, I did my degree at University of Derby. And this was in combined studies, so this was choosing different subjects to complete a degree so I could teach. After that, I pretty much taught myself computer programming, and I've been teaching computer programming, mathematics, and some science here in the UK. Pretty much everything I teach currently is self-taught. I teach myself everything. I don't really go to university or so to do these things that I'm teaching. I pretty much learn them on the side because I think I learn differently. And that is one of the things that people didn't realize about me. You can't just teach me things that to say, for example, 2 + 2 is 4. You have to sort of break that down and find the root of why we are doing it and the reason or how that's going to benefit me in the future and all of those different things with it for me to really understand it. So you have to go in depth. So if you're going to teach me something that would take someone 5 minutes, would probably take me 1 hour or 2 hours. And so nobody has that patience. So I had to sort of like teach myself. So currently I'm head of computing, ICT and business. I run the computing and business department. So we teach from year 7 all the way up to year 13. And we have additional programs for remedial students. So students who did not pass any subjects from after year 11, they come to me and I teach them IT and get them prepared for real world of work. I currently own a company in the UK called Zyqual Limited. So we develop our software to manage appraisals and lesson observations. That was the starting point, and I've introduced it to Jamaica. We have a few schools using it, and the hope is that every school across Jamaica would use it starting September or shortly after. Currently working on lesson plan systems and so on to track and monitor every lesson across the country so that students and teachers can have an overview of what they'll be learning and also where to find information that would support their learning. Over the years, because of the way that I learn and who I am and my past that I have, I've developed all of these traits. I've learned to work with people from different backgrounds. I pretty much plan and develop websites for people, develop apps. If you tell me or just give me an idea, I will be able to turn it into reality and so on. The reason for my success is just because of the way I was treated. I always felt that I deserved better, and I didn't feel that I was of the low quality mindset that people tried to implement on me or to put on me. I wanted to be better, and I was intrinsically motivated, and I wanted to do well. So I pushed myself, and I hope that in the future, people can recognize students like me and sort of like don't allow them to suffer in silence or treat them in a way that cause them to deviate from learning, but would inspire them and get them to become either successful like myself or even more. And I know many more people, you have additional stories that are probably more impressive. But people, teachers nowadays should try their best to know who the students are, not just to go and teach 1 + 1 is equal to 2, but try to figure out their backgrounds and know who they are and how they learn so that they can inspire them and cause them to have a bright future. And that is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. From a dismayed young man to a great man, from one who had to own his failure to recognize his success. And that is exactly a great trait, sir. Thank you for coming on and just sharing with us your journey.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to do that.
Yes, sir. All right. So now we'll be going into the discussions. So I want to urge you all to open your mics, use the raise hand feature, right? And you will be acknowledged. All right. So in a 2018 report, UNICEF found that globally, boys are at a disadvantage in education. So it explained how the society creates a situation where boys become disadvantaged in education. So I want someone to tell me in your own words, what are some of the ways that boys can be disadvantaged in learning? All right, so I'll go with Mr. Sidney Watson.
Okay, excellent. Good evening, and thank you for having me. I actually wanted to comment on some statements that were made earlier, as well as to answer what you just asked. Well, I'll go ahead. I believe that changes begin in the mind, and as such, we must begin to use positive words and change the language that we use with our boys, as well as girls. So I think there are many ways that our boys can be disadvantaged. For example, even like what was just mentioned by Mr. Pennycook, in that we are some teachers don't spend the time to know the intelligence of the boys, because every student learn differently. So if as teachers we spend the time to know how the student learn, how they react to certain subject areas, we can then better prepare lessons for them as well as to interact with them. It is important to note also that the brain has different, I would say, lobes because of how we learn as human beings. So when as teachers, we are creating activities for our students, I believe that we should try our best to engage every aspect, every part of the brain to engage our students, seeing that they learn differently. And I think we can be more open with our students, just to reason with them, to ensure that they understand what we are saying and not just to spend the time to cover the syllabus. That's what I would like to share. Thank you.
Please keep your responses a bit tight, quick, so that we can have as much persons responding as possible. All right, so we'll go to Daniel McBean. Okay, Mr. Rowe.
Oh, sorry, my mic was unmuted. Uh, not muted, sir.
Go
Anyways,
ahead, go ahead.
um, pertaining to the presenters, um, past and with people saying that he wouldn't pass his tests and such, I've went through something very similar to the point where some of my teachers were saying that I wouldn't pass GSAT in grade 6, and I I was getting like grades that weren't really approval, and sometimes yes I would get like a little spanking in my hand middle. And when I look back at it, my mom actually said to me that not only they were like, how would I say it, not only that the teachers were saying that I wouldn't pass, there was my farm teacher who was saying that she did not really go so hard on me because she thought that I would break down and I would actually not pass. So she was letting up on me, while for other students, I actually remember she going a little harder, which I'm saying that that actually would be best for some students who are dropping behind. Maybe they're going through something at home or kind of messing them up, or they are not really paying attention to the work because of it. And I understand, and which I like love to help people in classes, which if you like, I would be doing work, and if I get it and someone else doesn't, I would ask if they want the help. If they say that they are okay, I would leave them. If they want the help, I would help them, and sometimes I would even bring them to the teacher, and me and the teacher help the child. Other than that, the students who are working, like, they don't have any problem, they would um do their work, or sometimes they would come over and help me or some other students. So so to that extent, I understand what he meant in the presentation, and I am really grateful that he brought that up, because it really made me remember some stuff that would help me in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McBee. And I'll take a question from Mr. Rowe. All right.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hearing me, right?
Yes, hearing you clearly.
Okay, so I think that personally that students, especially males, they have like a low self-esteem, because when I was going to high school, I remember suffering from low self-esteem, not necessarily peer pressure, but a low self-esteem, with growing up without a father, just my mother alone, and going to school without lunch money. When sports day and other stuff, events are keeping at the school, I cannot go and all kind of stuff. So I was suffering internally from like low self-esteem. And when teacher called on me, I was afraid to talk because my uniform was not properly ironed, etc. So I think that some students as well, especially male, they don't like to be looked down on. So they struggle with low self-esteem, and that can be resulting having no money to go to school, having no one to talk to. Because I remember in this class, I was in grade, I think it was grade 11. I was in the class and two guys were always, because I love to sit at the back of the class where I can see everything. I want to see everybody head back on the board and everything. So these two guys were sitting up closer to the front, and they always, every time I go to English class, they always look at each other. Then they look at me, and then they just blurt out in laugh like that in the entire class. And they've been doing that over and over. Me with my low self-esteem now, me get a knife, my mother tallest, sharpest knife, put it, open my bag, put it in between the books. And I go to school, and I said, if this guy, I remember, and I didn't have anybody to talk to, nobody. I was just like get lunch money from my mom. I mean, bus fare from my mom now and then and stuff like that. So I go to school and I said, if these guys look at me again, I'm gonna just cut one of them throat. So I sit at the back of the class and they look at me again and they like blurt out in laugh. And the desk that was immediately behind one of them was clear. No one was sitting in that. So I go and I sit in that chair with my bag unzip my hand and the knife handle and to like I was saying, if this guy look around again, I'm going to like just wipe his throat and just take away myself from the class. And believe it or not, the guy did not turn around, like literally did not turn around. Even when I go back to that class over and over again, that guy did not turn around or say anything. And I'm grateful for that because I was suffering from low self-esteem and I didn't know why they were laughing and stuff like that and was shy, etc. Now with Mr. Pennycook conversation, I am basically in a similar situation. Started university. Like I completed high school, passed my subject, but I couldn't read. Like when I'm talking about reading, I'm talking about fluently understanding, etc. I was more of a thinker. I don't normally like to read. So even when I'm going to university, I have a lot of presentation and stuff like that to do. I have to go over it, and know every word and try to learn every word because I couldn't read. And I end up getting like fluent at reading when I was in like about third year university. And funny enough, I studied the same thing as Mr. Pennycook. I studied computer science, so I basically graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science, which I'm doing my master's now in same area. And I'm actually a teacher now, and I try to understand from student perspective and not try to generalize everybody. If you try to judge a fish to climb a tree, it will basically live its whole life thinking that it is stupid. Whereas you cannot judge everybody using the same book. You have to be more open-minded, you have to be more understanding to persons and compassionate. So that's my few words.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I have to move on to another question. So just to give the crowd, how do you feel about the narrative that society gives us, that girls are faster learners than boys? And what do you think this saying do to boys? All right, so I'll take this from Peter Hardy.
Okay. I am. Thank you very much. For taking me. I really wanted to respond to the earlier presentation, but I will just make a passing comment on your question. Um, Girls are faster learners than boys. It's really a truism, but it is not necessarily so. The fact is, if we look on how boys and girls are socialized and go to school and everything, essentially boys and girls start out at the same levels. As girls get older, boys get older, girls tend to have a growth spurt in at the primary level that give them an advantage. And so what we find is that girls tend to perform better than boys at the primary level. That has nothing to do with the capacity or the abilities of boys. It is just how boys and girls are different in their learning styles and so forth. But usually, when they get to the secondary level, all things being equal, ceteris paribus, if all things are equal, social things are in place, family structure is working all right, you will find that the very boy who was quote unquote slow at the primary level picks up and exceeds the girl at the secondary level. That is how it is. That's how the experts have it. And so I am saying that we need to do a lot more work at the primary level to to um to 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 deal with the false basis that we have that says that the boys are stupid and they are poor learners, especially that is not so. Boys and girls learn differently, and the sooner we pick that up, the better it will be. Just a passing comment as I close then. I think that one of the things that Mr. Pennycook's presentation highlight and what Mr. Rowe's presentation highlight is the absence of appropriate diagnosis of our boys and students generally. And so one of the things that Mr. Rowe would have benefited from and Mr. Pennycook at the primary level is if they were properly diagnosed. And so, I'm stepping forward. I think that a lot of what we need to be doing as a matter of priority going forward, and I hope that some of our stakeholders are hearing this, that when we get back to school, we need to ensure that we do the diagnostic tests for boys and girls, but primarily for boys, because the evidence is suggesting to us that the boys are the ones who are primarily not engaged with the learning process over the last 2 years. So we have to focus on the boys deliberately. And I think that if we do that, we also have to complement the diagnostic tests that we will have to do with with a lot of background work. The social workers, we need to employ a lot more social workers in the Ministry of Education, so that when the guidance counselors work with the schools and determine the problems that are in existence, social workers need to help the guidance counselors to do a lot of the social inquiry that Mr. Pennycook should have benefited from when he was in primary school, that Mr. Rowe would have benefited from, and so forth. And I think that it would go a far way in helping us to deal with the problems that we're having with our boys. Our boys are excellent. There are some challenges, but we need to make certain that we diagnose, diagnose, and diagnose. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harding. Um, but noting our time constraint, I must regrettably pause at this time and hand over to our host, Mr. Kevon Knight.
All right, so we thank you so much, gentlemen, for your participation and contributions in these discussions so far. I'm loving the conversation that we're having this evening. But we're going to pause to take our final presentation and then continue some more conversation afterwards from Mr. Travis Smith. Mr. Smith is the former president of the Rotary Club of Downtown Kingston, and he's here today to speak to us about, well, under the topic, giving boys a voice. Mr. Smith, you can go ahead. All right, until Mr. Smith gets back into the room, we will be furthering some conversations in the interim. So our other facilitator, Mr. Javon, we can proceed with our conversations on your topic, sir.
All right. Not a problem. Okay. All right. Here we are. All right. So this section is specifically for the students with us today. So I'm gonna kindly ask the adults and teachers to lower their hands, and the students among us, the young men among us, to raise their hands. This conversation is specifically directed towards you guys. All right, so let me repeat. I just want all the students, the young men, to raise their hands, and all the adults to lower their hands. All right. We haven't heard much from you, so maybe just like one or two of you bros just unmute. Let us know you're still here with us. Just say hi, good afternoon, or hail us up. Just let us know that you're still here, because this is for you guys. So, yeah, man. Some of you guys just unmute, give a little hail up. Carson, Alex Shaw, you guys there? Come on, guys.
Yeah, man, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here,
I'm here.
Sim.
All right, that's great. That's great. All right, so this conversation aspect, it's specifically directed towards regulating what influences us men, because as the men of the society, we have to be careful, of what we allow to really affect the way that we carry on with our lives. I'm not sure how many of you have heard the quote, "What you put in is what you get out." Well, guess what, guys? That same quote applies to our lives as well, and especially for us men. So, can any of you guys just list some of the things that that influence the actions of us men in regards to our modern day environment, the groups of people or the modern day things that are around us that influences who we are, what we become. Anyone? Just name one or two. There's a lot of them. Anybody can just unmute and talk to us. All right. All right. I guess I have to call some names. All right. D'Anthony Patterson, I see you, man. I see you. Are you here with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you as a guy, which form are you in now?
Third form.
Third form. So, what are some of the things that you realize influences who you are, how you are, how you act, and everything? Talk to us, man. Anything that influences you, your actions. All right, D'Anthony, what do you think? All right, let me help D'Anthony out there. First thing that should come to any of your minds is your friends, right? Your friends are one of the first groups that influence who you are, how you act. All right, guys, let me list them for you, and then you guys can expound on something else, right? So we have friends, of course, there's the music that we listen to, and we also have our family. Our family is like the first thing ever in our lives that influences our actions and how we become. And of course, as some of our presenters and our audience have said earlier, social media also plays a huge role, in what influences our actions. So yeah, guys, hope you're still with us. Come on, you're gonna make the teachers outdo you guys in participation. This event is for you guys. So John Luke Donald is still here, man. I see your hand is raised. Just checking in. John Luke. All right. John Luke's not here with us. I mean, I am seeing a lot of fans, with you guys, you students. This event is for you guys. So Stephen,
Yes,
Stephen,
sir,
are you
I'm
here?
here.
Okay. John Luke, that's you. All right. Stephen, you here, man? Stephen, I see your hand is raised. I mean, so you must be here, right? All right, no worries. You guys must be able to get active soon enough. All right, so let's move on. Let us move on. So, all right, so in regards to the things that we just listed, that influence, how we act, friends, music, family, social media, we have to be wary of these things, because all of these things can affect, our mindset, how we become, because the positivity negativity ratio is a huge thing that we have to look out for as young men, and as one of our guests mentioned earlier, where he didn't have any strong support, so he was very down, to the point where he brought a knife to school, because that balance, of what was there to influence him was off, so this conversation is really to ensure that you guys are aware of what influences you, and you can take control of that. All right, so in terms of social media, I just want one of you guys to unmute and just explain just a bit, about how social media would influence your actions. All right, I'm gonna give you guys 5 seconds, somebody just unmute. If not, then I'll call a random name. All right, anybody, any students, any guy. All right, so let me call a name. First on the list, I see Rashard Smith. You hear Rashard?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, man. All right. So which form are you in?
I'm just going into second form.
Ah, that's great. That's great, man. So you're fairly new to high school life, you know. So being a ingoing second former, you know, what's your opinion on social media? You know, how has it influenced you so far?
Well,
Just talk to us,
for
man. Yeah.
example, if I go on something like Instagram and I see other children posing up with, like, how do I put this? I see other children doing other things that I would wish to do or something like that. It kind of gives the fact that you cannot do it. It makes you retaliate a certain way. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
sometimes you see other persons and you wish to do the things that they could be able to do.
Yeah, all right, Rashard. Thanks a lot for mentioning that. So, I love the fact that you pointed out, you know, you seeing these things and you not being able to carry out these things. So that sole comment, you know, links to not just social media. Well, I guess, you know, music and social media, you know, are one and the same, and you can even link friends to that as well. So yes, that is important because, you know, being in this world today, you know, so the title is, you know, regarding what influences you. You have to be careful. You have to filter out, you know, what you see in terms of social media or even in terms of the music you listen to. For example, you may enjoy, you know, this is for all the guys. You may enjoy, you know, being on TikTok. You may enjoy, you know, what you see on Instagram, but you have to filter out, you know, what you want to do and what is just for jokes. You know, you may listen to some dancehall, but just because they hear some people saying this doesn't mean that you have to go and become that type of person too. So thanks a lot, Rashad, for pointing that out. You know, that is the main thing, you know, we as future men need to have luck, you know, that we have to filter out, you know, what we allow to influence us. So yes, guys, yes, guys. Can any of you guys highlight, you know, what mindset means? Just to you talk about and just give a little definition for what mindset means. So I see Damara Rose here. You hear Damara? All right, I'm seeing some new hands raised, but let me check in on Damara. Damara, you hear, man? Yeah, and it's still raised. All right, I see some people really happy and really wants to talk. All right, so, okay, let's move on then. Rashawn Wright, you hear, man? Rashawn Wright.
Yes, sir.
All right, man, that's great. All right, so mindset, when you hear that word mindset, what does it mean to you in terms of definition or just your understanding?
How would I explain?
No, man, just go for it. The first thing, even if you don't want to give a full-on definition, say the first word that comes to your head when you hear mindset.
A decision or a theory.
Okay. I like that, Rashawn. So yes, that is perfectly linked to mindset, you know, a decision, a theory, and you know, all of us guys, our mindset is solely based on, you know, the environment around us, you know. And this is linked to what we were saying earlier about positivity and negativity. So yes, guys, we're gonna wrap up now. So yes, you have to be wary of what influences you because you don't want to formulate a negative mindset. You know, we've had presenters and audiences that just spoke about how due to some aspects of their lives, you know, they ended up having, you know, negative thoughts, you know, negative beliefs, but thankfully they were able to overcome them. So yes, guys, you have to filter out and allow positivity to be in your life to really, you know, become the men of tomorrow. So yes, guys, I'm gonna pass back on over to Mr. Knight.
All right, gentlemen, we're trying to steer the conversation some more to the issue of goal setting. So many of us as young men, we tend to move with the flow, a dirt as we always call it, and we tend to not have much direction as to where we want to go. So let's talk about some goal setting. Do we set goals for ourselves? What kind of goals do we set? And what are some tips that we can share with each other as to how to go about setting those goals to ensure that those goals are one, achievable, and two, are very much achieved and are very much relatable to what we need to be doing in this given point in time. I see a few hands raised. I just want to encourage you, if your hand was just raised for being raised purposes, to acknowledge that you're a student here, kindly put your hands down. For all of the persons here who now want to have a conversation with us, feel free to raise your hands and I will definitely acknowledge you and unmute you as we go along. So I see the hands going down and I see some hands still raised. I see Alex Shaw. Alex, talk to us.
Yeah. There's a lot of topics that. First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can hear you.
Okay, so there was a lot of topics that concerned me. My hand was up, but I couldn't really speak on them. Personally, I am a student with, let's just say, an abnormal, but what should be normal mindset. So, like, for example, Xavier, if that's how his name is pronounced, when like I go to school in grade 7, I see him on the compound and notice difference in him. Like he's in an older grade, but I would have been friends with him. The thing is, I don't, I find myself being different from the other students. I focus on goals and, well, good values because I don't know, like me personally, I know that we're speaking about the absence of males in the household, like good role models. Well, do not have a father, but I still, like, my mother motivates me to do stuff that helps the society, like the proper norms. And for example, the music and all of that, the violence and all that is just not me. I am more of a person who dwells on, what can you say? Like, for example, to go to college or all of that, I just keep on working hard. If you're a student, if you're a teacher who knew me from grade 7, you would have noticed that my grades are okay, but my attendance is very low due to, big word, poverty. So a lot of things go by, and I just, like, me, when, like, I'm going in grade 10 now, so when I get my books down, I'm like, yeah, man, I start read and know a little bit before I go to school, September, all of that. But it's never sure from the fact that I I am not financially stable now, but I have to make it so that I am financially stable in the future. And that what I am doing now, my further generations from me, my offspring and their offspring can be wealthy and with stuff. So I do not focus on what is happening in the moment. I focus on what I want to happen in the future. Sorry for taking so much time, sir.
That's fine. That's fine, Alex. So we must always find a motivating factor to ensure that we are feeling the drive in order to achieve our goals. Some of us, our motivation factors are definitely, as Shaw said, poverty. A lot of us really just trying to escape poverty and really trying to set a future for generations to come. And that is what we use as a catalyst to achieve all that we need to achieve. Lovely. Theodore, let's hear what you have to say.
Yes. All right. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So, goals. Personally, my advice when giving goals is to set short-term goals. So, like, think about where you want to be in life first, and then you set like a short-term goal. So, like, all right, I want to get a certain average on this kind of test so that I can probably get a scholarship or something like that. Or I want to work on a certain project so that people can see it and probably see my potential. And in the future, opportunities may come that way. So yeah, short-term goals. The next thing is to set realistic goals. Look what is happening in society, how the certain jobs are working now, whether it is successful or not, whether it would be good for you or not. Like, would it fit your lifestyle? Would it fit the lifestyle that you want? So say for instance, just an example, say you want to be an architect, but you love to be active and run around all the time. Architect is very To be an architect, it's very time consuming. You know, you have to be home most of the time on the laptop making drawings for hours, days. Although yes, you can still manage your time a certain way, but you know, you'd still want to be outside a bit more. So you'd have to think about things like that. Um, Surround yourself with good company, people that inspire you, people that you want, people that will uplift you. You know, you can't want be at a certain place in life and um you're surrounding yourself with people that don't really have any goals, no ambitions, don't want to be anywhere in life. They just they're one place. Understand? You want to be around people that can motivate you, inspire you. And even when you surround yourself with people like that, you yourself can inspire other people that are that were probably in your position. So, you know, yeah, that's all I have to say really.
All right, lovely. Thanks so much, Theodore. Definitely setting short-term goals that add up to long-term achievements is definitely a good way of looking at goal setting. Carson Campbell, let's hear what you have to say.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right, it's a pleasure to be here. Honestly, from what I've heard, what I've listened to and internalized, it is a lot to process and it is very valuable. And I must say, I'm very thankful to be a part of this. And I'm pretty sure that the 400 and odd other participants are very thankful as well. As it relates to goal setting, because I wanted to say some stuff before from Mr. Pennycook's presentation, but I never got the chance, but that's fine. As it relates to goal setting, my definition of goal setting would basically be prioritizing what is most important. It doesn't have to be in any particular hierarchy, but it can come as what is most important. And definitely, you would have to structure how you'd want to achieve them. As stated before, short term for long term. Excuse me. And you know, it is what a person is really most focused on. For a lot of it, it comes through influence. And for a person, depending on what their influence is like, it will determine their mentality. But it was mentioned before that a choice has to be made, and so a person usually has to make the choice what they prioritize. So for me, I like to have fun. I like to go out, but is it a high priority? No, it's not. Do I want to have friends? Do I want to be social? Of course, but it's not a high priority all the time. And so right now, let's say even as me as a first year student in university, I prioritize putting my little programming together because I like to program, I like to code and things. So I like to practice. So I have to do that to ensure that in the future I can become an excellent programmer. And that is just my goal. If I want to have fun in the meantime, that's fine. But goal setting is definitely supposed to be on every man's priority list and the top of the list. So that's just my 2 cents.
All right, thank you so much, Carson. In the interest of time and the fact that we all want to close off at 6 o'clock, I am just going to say a few things regarding goal setting. For goal setting, I want to encourage all the gentlemen on the call this evening to ensure that you set SMART goals for yourself. SMART in an acronym, S being specific goals, goals that you know that you want, and these goals are goals that are defined and clear. All right. M being measurable. All your goals must be able to be measured. You must be able to add a numeric amount or a description to exactly what you want to accomplish and how you will go accomplishing that. Being measurable means it has to be trackable. And so you can look at the beginning of the year and know, all right, I set a goal for myself. I want to buy a car at the end of the year, right? So the time that you give yourself is 12 months, and you are able to track yourself and measure yourself along the process and count the amount of money you've saved towards buying that car, or count how good your credit is in order to take out a loan to get that car. Yeah? Attainable. That goal must be able to be achieved. It must be able to be materialized. So there's no way you can set a goal. For instance, you want to go to space in 2021, but you have no wherewithal to get to space, right? So you must be able to achieve, attain that goal to the best of your ability in a given time span. Relevant. It must be relevant to your desires, your pursuits, your values, and who you are as a person. And again, 4T, trackable. It must be able to be followed and to be analyzed and assessed to monitor your achievement. All right, so ensure that all your goals are SMART, and that is how you're able to calculatively achieve whatever you need to throughout your entire life. That's something that has helped me quite a bit throughout my 21 years, and I'm sure it will be much impactful to you. That said, gentlemen on the call and ladies who are here visiting with us, I just want to thank all of our participants today who chimed into our conversation and who definitely made our evening great. We want to thank all of our presenters. We want to thank our moderators, Mr. Xavier McFarlane and Javon Hyman. We want to thank Mr. Chin, who did our greetings and prayer this afternoon. We want to thank gentlemen from Cornwall College and all the other presenters this evening, inclusive of, let me bring up the list of persons that we had on our presentations this afternoon. Right, inclusive of Mr. Bonnie Rose and Mr. Robertino Gordon, right? That said, ladies and gentlemen on the call, we want to thank the TCJ team and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for hosting this conference. And we want to thank our participants who shared so lustily this afternoon. This discourse was pretty meaningful, and I hope all the stakeholders that were involved in today's conversation were taking notes and are able to come and develop policies and programs to help our gentlemen to succeed and to set our way onto definite, permanent success as it pertains to how we go forward as a country. Ladies and gentlemen, do have yourselves a wonderful rest of the evening, and goodbye.